She was an orphan, a foreigner, a woman with no power in a dangerous kingdom. Yet her courage changed the destiny of millions. This is the story of Queen Esther. If you've ever felt unseen, overlooked, or powerless, then this story was written for you. In ancient Persia, the most powerful empire on earth, lived a young Jewish orphan named Esther. Her parents were gone, so her cousin Mordecai raised her. They lived in exile, outsiders in a foreign land, a people displaced. Esther had no royal blood. She had no wealth, no connections, no power. But she had something far greater. God was quietly positioning her for a purpose she couldn't yet see. At the head of this vast empire was King Xerxes. He ruled with absolute authority, but he was impulsive, easily swayed, and dangerously unpredictable. His queen, Vashti, discovered this firsthand. When she refused to be paraded before his drunk and rowdy guests, he banished her in a fit of rage. Just like that, the throne was empty. So the king's advisors came up with a plan: gather the most beautiful young women from across the empire. From this massive group, the king would choose his new queen. Esther was among those taken to the palace whether she wanted to go or not. The law demanded it. She was swept into a world of politics, luxury, and immense danger. Inside the palace, something remarkable started to happen. Esther's grace and humility won everyone's favor, from the servants to the king's most trusted eunuch. When it was finally her turn to meet the king, he was captivated. The Bible says he loved her more than all the others. And so, he placed the royal crown on her head. An orphan girl, a foreigner, was now the queen of Persia. But her cousin Mordecai gave her a serious warning: don't reveal who you are. Don't tell anyone you are a Jew. The political climate was too risky. So, Esther kept her identity a closely guarded secret. This story is just getting started, and if it's already speaking to you, hit that subscribe button and stay with us for what happens next. Inside the palace walls lurked a man named Haman. He was ambitious, arrogant, and consumed by a poisonous pride and hatred. The king promoted him, elevating him above all the other nobles, and commanded that everyone bow down to him. And everyone did. Everyone, except Mordecai. As a Jew, Mordecai would only bow to God. When Haman learned that the man who refused to bow was a Jew, his rage exploded. He didn't just want revenge on one man, he wanted to annihilate an entire people. He went to King Xerxes with a twisted story, convincing the king that the Jewish people were a threat to the empire. He persuaded the king to issue a decree: on a specific day, every Jewish man, woman, and child in the empire would be destroyed. The decree was sealed with the king's ring. In Persia, a law sealed by the king could not be undone. It was final. When Mordecai heard the news, he was devastated. He tore his clothes and mourned loudly in the streets, a public display of heart-wrenching grief. Word of his distress reached Queen Esther inside the palace. Confused and alarmed, she sent a servant to find out what was wrong. Mordecai's message back to her was urgent and direct: you must go to the king. Plead with him for your people. But Esther was terrified, and for good reason. She sent a message back, explaining the deadly palace protocol: anyone who approaches the king in his inner court without being summoned is put to death. There's only one exception: if he extends his golden scepter. And I haven't been called to see the king for 30 days. Mordecai's reply was one of the most powerful challenges in history. The words that came back to her changed everything. He said, don't think for a moment that because you reign in the king's house you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will rise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. The weight of destiny fell on Esther's shoulders. She had a choice to make: protect her own life through silence, or risk everything through sacrifice. She made her decision. Her message back to Mordecai was filled with courage. Go, gather all the Jews who are in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. For 3 long days, an entire community fasted and prayed. Then Esther put on her finest royal robes and did the unthinkable. She walked, uninvited, into the inner court of the palace and stood before the king's throne. Her life hung on a single glance. The king looked up, saw her, and extended his golden scepter. Her life was spared. But Esther was wise and strategic. She didn't blurt out her request. Instead, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet. At that banquet, she simply invited them to another one the very next day. She was setting the stage. That night, a twist of fate, or perhaps divine intervention, unfolded. The king couldn't sleep. To pass the time, he had the royal records read aloud to him. As the scribe read, the king was reminded of a past event. Mordecai had uncovered an assassination plot and saved the king's life. The king asked, "What honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this?" The answer was, "Nothing has been done for him." The very next morning, Haman arrived at the palace, early and eager. He had built a massive gallows and was planning to ask the king's permission to execute Mordecai on it that day. But before Haman could speak, the king asked him a question. What should be done for the man the king delights to honor? Haman's ego soared. He thought, who would the king want to honor more than me? So he described a lavish public ceremony, put the man in the king's own robes, place him on the king's horse, and have a noble lead him through the city streets proclaiming this is what is done for the man the king delights to honor. The king replied, "Perfect. Go at once. Get the robe and the horse and do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate." Haman was utterly humiliated, forced to honor the very man he planned to kill. But his nightmare was just beginning. That evening, at the second banquet, the king again asked Esther, "What is your petition?" "It will be given to you." "What is your request?" "Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted." Taking a deep breath, Esther finally revealed her heart. "If I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life, this is my petition. And spare my people, this is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." The king was stunned, then furious. Who is he? Where is the man who has dared to do such a thing? Esther looked directly across the table and pointed. An adversary and enemy. This vile Haman. The king erupted in rage and stormed out into the garden. When he returned, Haman was desperately begging Queen Esther for his life, having fallen on her couch. The king saw this and shouted, "Will he even assault the queen while she is with me in the house?" At that moment, Haman's fate was sealed. He was executed on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. But the original decree to destroy the Jews still stood. Persian law couldn't be revoked. So, the king gave Esther and Mordecai his authority to write a new decree. This new law allowed the Jewish people to assemble and defend themselves against any who might attack them. On the day that was meant for their destruction, they fought back and survived. The day meant for their annihilation became their day of victory. So what does this ancient story teach us today? It shows us that God often places us exactly where we need to be, long before we understand why. You might feel powerless right now. You might feel overlooked, unprepared, or that your voice doesn't matter. But your position, your influence, your voice, they all matter more than you know. Your moment may be closer than you think. And when it comes, don't stay silent. History doesn't just turn on the actions of the powerful, it turns on the faithfulness of the courageous. If this story encouraged you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. And always remember, you might have been made for such a time as this. Thanks for watching.